Bill, is that the Disney ship behind you?
No, it isn't. These are some nautical ships that our house on Sarasota Island here is decorated in a nautical theme. My wife is, I think, a really good decorator. So those are a couple of pictures that she had obtained and also had framed. Thank you.
There she is.
I'm all set for Cinco de Mayo.
Good.
1 minute.
Is Bridget joining us?
She's there.
Oh, I don't see her. Oh, I see there's some more over there. For some reason, I have Jane all over my screen.
Shirley, if you change the view to gallery view, you can see everybody.
I did.
Okay, great.
Okay. Are you ready?
Sure.
Is he ready?
We're in.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the school board meeting this Tuesday, May 5th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was turned the other way, I didn't see any of your stomachs. Some people chided me about. Okay. First on our agenda is Mrs. Cochran.
Yes, we've asked Florida School Boards Association to come in and give us an update on the superintendent search. So I'll turn it over. Andrea?
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Bill Vogel.
Okay, there we go.
Bill, you want to start? This is John.
Thank you. We're here and we're ready to go. First of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to update you this afternoon and maybe answer any questions you might have. I'm very pleased to report that the search is running to perfection so far. The superintendent search portal is up and running. Nina has done an outstanding job. The portal right now, and I'm looking at it on my iPad here, has the timeline, applicant resumes. We've already received 2 applicant resumes. The brochure, which is very well done. And also, you're going to find the training for the advisory committee that Mr. Hardy and Mrs. Messina did on a YouTube video, and I think that's very effective. So everything is going very well there. I'd like to go ahead and also tell you, Kathy Tompkins, I work with Kathy, but all of the advertisements are posted. They were all posted the day that we went ahead and started the search, and we've received many inquiries already. And as I said, there are two sitting superintendents who have actually applied right now. But I'd like to ask John to just go back through and tell us the process we're using to get the applications posted and make sure the board is fine with that, or to see if they'd like to have any change in process. So John, why don't you take over this part here?
Thank you, Dr. Vogel. Basically, from I think our original work session with the board, we discussed the process. And currently what I am doing, once I receive a complete application, there are some inquiries that do come in that's missing some of the items. So I have communication back and forth with those persons until we get a complete application. And then when I receive that complete application, I forward it to Kathy Tompkins and ask Kathy to please forward immediately to board members, and also to work with their IT staff to have it posted on the web portal, the superintendent search portal. As you receive those, and I'm sure you received the first two from Ms. Tompkins yesterday, they are numbered, and we'll number them 1 through the last number when the advertisement closes. It really helps us keep track of the applications in a smoother process, and with regard to not having to identify by name. So the numbering does help, and the numbering is simply the order in which they come in. It has no other value other than the order in which the completed applications were received. So that is our current process, and certainly if there was any input from the board to alter that some, we certainly could do that.
Any comments, board members? Andrea?
I just wanted to mention, John said that the number that we assign them has no other importance other than the order in which they're received. But in fact, when it comes to interviewing, and sometimes candidate A, candidate B, candidate C, we determine who gets the first interview based on who got their application in first. So it does actually reflect in the end when we get towards interviews, because we don't like to be accused of any impropriety with regard to giving one person preferential treatment over another. So the only way that we can determine it to be fair is based on who got their applications in the order in which they came in.
Correct. Thank you, Andrew.
Any other questions? Bill?
Is this, I just want to make sure, board members, are you okay with this process, or we're okay with that? Okay, great. Mrs. Messina has prepared some I think on the Citizens Advisory Committee recommendations are not due until May 19th. And I know some board members are working on that and getting their names to Mrs. Tompkins. We will need their email and their cell phone because we do have an orientation process for those members. So as Mrs. Tompkins is preparing that list, that would be very helpful. But I think we talked about the last time about the guidelines for the members on that committee. Mrs. Messina has also prepared rules of procedure for the committee, and you did receive that today, and that's an information item for you. Mrs. Messina, could you comment on that? Board members have time to look over that, and if they want to make any changes on that on the 19th, they can go ahead and make changes, but I'd like you, maybe if you can just briefly summarize that.
You bet. And so one of the things that we find helpful both for the board and the community members serving on the Community Advisory Committee is to have a pretty clear understanding of the scope of the work that is being expected of them. So we try to capture that. Now, I will tell you that each district, there are some little nuances that you may want to change to it. So if you have any suggested changes, go ahead and shoot those to me. I'd like to be able to have an agenda item on the 19th prior to your appointment of the board members, the approval of this document, and then the board member, or excuse me, I say board members, the committee members will have a copy of this document. John and I have already developed a virtual orientation. We haven't recorded it because we want to do it live, similar to the way we're doing this, so that we can interact with your community members and answer questions, although we will record it. And so we'll distribute the CAC guideline specifications to them, and we're going to be providing an orientation to them. That orientation that John and I plan to do is different from the Sunshine Law training that Art and I recorded. They'll need both of those trainings, the Sunshine Law and the orientation. The Sunshine Law that Art and I filmed, it's really right around 30 minutes. It's not that long. And we thought that by having it available on demand, your Citizens Advisory Committee members could access it at their own convenience. And so as long as they are going to be able to affirm that they have watched it, and we'll ask for that affirmation in the form of an email that gets sent to Kathy Tompkins, then that will be the affirmation that they've done the Sunshine Law and public records training. And then I'd like to schedule a date for the actual orientation sometime during the week of May 25th. So I don't know if any of you have preferential dates. We typically try to avoid Wednesdays because a lot of people have church, and a lot of people are still doing their church activities virtually. But I don't know if you all have any preferences on dates. We will record it, so if someone can't participate, they can watch it at a later date.
So all that is going extremely well. I'd also like.
Hold on, John, or Bill. Bridget had a question.
Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you. No, real quick, I just wanted to get a sense of time. How long do you think the training would be? Just again, I think the expectations are, how long would we recommend to tell them to carve out?
John, what are you thinking? I'm thinking it would be less than an hour, depending on the questions. Our part would be probably 20, 25 minutes at the most. But then if there's a lot of questions, and sometimes there is, and people feed off each other, then the people can kind of leave as they need to if they can't stay longer. I'd say 45 minutes. John, what are your thoughts on that?
Andrew, I would agree. I think our presentation, and when I kind of reviewed it and kind of talked through it and gave it a little leeway for comments between you and I, it was about 25 minutes. And then I think probably 15, 20 minutes for questions. So I would think 45 minutes, certainly no more than an hour.
And one follow-up, and I apologize if this is in the document that you'd sent, I'll review that after our meeting today, but I know chair is not the right word, but who, especially because it's going to be virtual, and you have 25, that's a lot of people, who facilitates it? I mean, we need...
We will facilitate that. John will be the lead facilitator, and I will be there. And here's what we have in mind. And again, I can't say enough about the tech team led by Joe and Jamal. What we were going to do is set this up just like a school board meeting using the Zoom platform, but I was going to be personally on site, just like some of you are right now. And then the tech people would be there. If there are some committee members that are uncomfortable with using the Zoom platform, it was suggested we use rooms A and B. They're large enough so we could social distance everybody, and we could be on site if there's anybody has any problems. And also your tech people would be there if there are any difficulties. So that's what we had in mind. And Andrea, I know you talked with Joe directly about this. If you'd like to add to this.
Yeah, one of the things that we really wanted to make sure didn't happen was that if someone didn't have access to technology, they would be prohibited from participating. So we wanted to create a vehicle that would allow for that, and having Bill physically on site there, we thought would help facilitate that. So John and I will come in virtually like we are right now. Bill will be on site. Just so you know that we'll start the agenda for the orientation is introductions. We'll do an overview. We'll cover their responsibilities. We'll talk about the materials and how they're going to get the information. We'll talk about the process, and we'll talk about the expected outcomes, which are a pool of applicants that the board ought to continue to consider. So we go through all those steps and explain all the steps to them, answer their questions so that they have a very clear understanding of what it is that we're asking them to do.
Bridget? Bridget? She's good. Oh, okay.
Certainly, there's
I'll put
nothing.
the thumb in the hand.
There's nothing like a face-to-face communication, but in these times, we have to be innovative and we have to use the technology that we have available. And we couldn't do it without your team. And certainly, we're excited about this process because it's worked so well with our board meeting. So, what I'd like to do now is have John review the timeline and also go through what we need to have approved on May 19th. And one of the first items for approval on May 19th was approval of those rules that you received the draft of today. And I'm going to make a note of that, and Kathy will too. But John, do you want to take us through the timeline and then talk about what we need to have approved on the 19th?
All right, thank you. Yes, board, at our May 19th meeting, as Dr. Vogel mentioned, we will ask for the approval of the Citizens Advisory Committee specifications and guidelines that Andrea spoke to. We would ask at that time that the board approve the membership, the formal approval of the membership of the advisory committee. We will also discuss the methods and process for the selection of the finalists that will be asked to come on site for the on-site interviews. Once those names are submitted forward from the advisory committee, we also will kind of give you an outline of the finalist interview schedule and also discuss some of the board interview questions and also questions that you will have for those persons that come from the advisory committee that we would ask them to respond to within a specified amount of time for the board to review prior to their actions on selecting the finalist. And also we'll have a few comments and information regarding contract negotiation items and also the process that would be used once you identify and select an individual to begin the contract negotiation process. So that would be the items that we currently have on our agenda for May 19th. To continue on with the timeline, May the 29th would of course be our advertisement closing date, midnight on May the 29th. That will be followed by our 3 Citizens Advisory Committee meetings. The first one being June 1st, the second one being June 9th. And as we've discussed before, if needed, the third one would be June the 16th. Currently, if the committee does require 3 meetings, then as soon as the committee identifies a group to send forward to the board, we will immediately send those list of names to the board members probably as soon as that meeting is over. So if the committee does identify their group to send forward and finalize that at the second meeting, we'll certainly get that to the board as soon as the committee completes their task and their job to do.
John, one
Yes,
minute.
ma'am.
So are you expecting the advisory committee to call the numbers down to 3 or 4?
ma'am.
You're expecting them to review all of the applications that come in and do what with them then?
Okay. After they receive all of the applications, when they come to their subsequent meeting after receiving all the applications, then we will ask them to start reducing that list of candidates down to maybe 18 to 20. At that meeting, if they say come up with 17 names, and then they go back and do additional research and come back for the subsequent meeting to identify, to identify anywhere from 8 to 10 individuals to send to the board. It has occurred in some of these advisory committee meetings where at the second meeting, the committee comes up, say, with 11 names that they are very, very comfortable with, all of the committee members. And at that point, they say, these are the names we wish to send forward. We don't give a specific number. We simply say, what is in a range of 8 to 10 or 11 that you would like the board to further consider. So they're not really narrowing it down to 2 or 3. It will be a fluid number around 8 to 10, sometimes 11 names. And sometimes the committee says, here are 7 that we think should go forward, and that's it. So there's not a specific number that we start with that they must identify.
But they have to have some identifying comments about how strongly they feel for one superintendent to another. Bill?
Yes. We asked them not to rank candidates, but the process we use is we have a chart with each committee member's name on the chart and then each applicant's number along the top. So the board has access to that. So, you know, some of the candidates will have more check marks than others. And John, you can expand on that a little bit too. So that, they're not prioritizing it, but you can see their preferences.
Or could you
Right,
send
and-
a copy of that?
Yes.
That sheet,
Yeah,
please.
Mrs. Messina, do you want to talk about that chart and so we can show the board members how that works?
Sure. I do want to mention, I think what Caroline is getting to is how do they get from the 8 to 10 to the 3 or however many the board decides to interview.
Yeah.
And that's something we need to discuss today, because what I need to know from you all is, do you want, let's just call them semifinalists for lack of a better term, the ones that are still in the pool that the Community Advisory Committee brings to you, let's call them semifinalists, and let's just for purposes of this conversation say that there are 12. How do we get from 12 to 3? Do you want them to respond in writing to some questions, or do you want them to respond to something in a video to some questions? How many questions do you want them to respond to? The one thing I would tell you is we don't want to have the semifinalists spend hours and hours and hours on it, because some of them will not become the finalists, but we do want to get a feel for who these candidates are so that it gives you an idea of who you want to interview. And I will tell you, while the written answers might not be something that you would think would be very helpful, we have had candidates in numerous searches, both with our search firm and others, because we actually ask a question and tell the candidates they have to answer within 250 words or 500 words. It's the editing of those words that really helps hone in on their thoughts. And they find that those exercises in writing are very, very helpful. And in some cases, they felt like those were the most significant pieces of the superintendent search. Visual's important too, because that gives you a feel for people, especially if we end up having to do the interviews visually or virtually. You're going to have that at some point anyway. You may want to start with that, but I'm going to need to know that. And then the other thing I'm going to need to know today is typically what would happen is there might be 5 questions that we would ask the semifinalists to respond to. I would get a question from each one of you. I would want to call you on the phone and kind of talk through the area of focus. I have some notes from a conversation that this board had with us quite some time ago when we were initially coming in, and you all brought up some topics that you wanted to make sure questions were going to be around. So I have that list with me right here. Bridget, you mentioned something at the last meeting talking about processes that candidates have put in place for the departure in the county that they're leaving. So I captured that, and I'd want to talk through to make sure that I've correctly captured your question there. But one of the things that we caution about is we recently did a search in Flagler, and we emailed the questions to the board members, and then they ended up getting printed in the newspaper before the search. And so we have to be just really cautious about putting things in writing and getting them out before, because we want every candidate to have an equal access to the questions and the information.
I think listening to that, the better way to do it is that we submit our questions to you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I would want to call you on the phone
You be the
and
keeper
talk
of
through
the
them.
questions.
Yes,
Because as soon as you give them to us as a list, it's public knowledge.
correct.
Mrs. Goodwin? Hang on.
I had a question about the start date, Mr. Vogel. Did you
Yes,
say June 1st or June 2nd was the first meeting for our citizens committee?
So the first citizens meeting is June 2nd.
Okay.
Is June 2nd. Yes, ma'am. The other thing we will start doing immediately after the citizens committee finishes their work, we will have our law firm who does our background checks start immediately on that. And then we will conclude our research on our background checks that we do also and check the past. So we'll have all of that information by the time the board is ready to make their decision on the finalists.
Hold on, Bill. Shirley?
I was asking about the June 1st date also, because I think Jim said June 1st and we had June 2nd, so I
June
just,
2nd, correct. The count is correct. Yes.
All right. Bridget?
Thank you. And I'm scanning, I know that based on timeline, the 19th, I think is our next meeting, to adopt or ratify our committee members, but also the rules and procedures. And so I was I was reading it here on my phone just to catch up on it. But just to clarify, is once we ratify the rules, I mean, obviously, ideally, we want to have talked through whatever issues there are so we can adopt it on the 19th. But as soon as they're identified and ratified, for lack of a better term, they will be getting applications right or after the first meeting is convened. Because I think we were talking about timeline, and I want to make sure they're getting. So can you talk through that a little bit more, just to make sure I'm clear?
Don will cover that. Yes.
Yeah.
Right, Ms. Ziegler, what we've done, as soon as the board identifies the advisory committee membership and they've completed their training and the orientation, we go ahead and begin sending those advisory committee members the resumes, the complete applications in the same manner that I send to Ms. Thompson. I would personally send them to each advisory committee member and kind of walk them through the process as we start sending them. But the sooner they get them, the better. So when they kind of come to that first meeting, say we get 35, 40 applicants, there may be a group that they've already said, here's kind of my top group, here's another group. But we'll start getting that to them as soon as they're formally identified as being committee members.
Okay. Shirley?
on that committee list, I left names off. In fact, one name that I had, Carol Nickla, after I talked to her, she thinks it's going to be difficult for the meetings. So I would like to take some of those that would call the office and put them on my list. Steve Largo and Roberta Hamilton and Richard Murphy. I don't know him, but I'll call him and talk to him. I think seeing that he used to be a superintendent might be helpful to have him on the committee.
I'd like to point out something, that a good portion of the committee is composed of prior school board employees. I don't know if you're all aware of it, but that's what's happening.
One of mine is not a school board employee.
Roberta is, Steve Dragon is, Scott Limpy, Steve Largo, and Bob Meyer. So it's pretty close to 10 out of the 25 are former employees. Not that it means anything, I'm just pointing it out so that we're aware of of how the committee is being slanted.
Well,
What? What'd you say?
I think 6.
No, it's more than that.
I think that, we did not have, when we talked about what guidelines we would have, we did not have any restrictions for former employees.
No, I'm not asking for restrictions.
Right.
I'm just saying this is what's happening. And these are where the committee is slanted. Okay? Who's up next?
The other,
Bill.
we just wanted to make sure you're aware of what Mrs. Tompkins is going to do is we're planning on utilizing electronic means to send all of our information out. But if board members or committee members prefer to have hard copies, then Mrs. Tompkins is going to be contacting them to make sure. So we don't want anybody to be restricted from participating because of the technology ability that they might have. So we wanted you to be aware of that also.
But that should probably go in, not the rules, but as additional language.
You don't have to put that in there necessarily because
No,
Mrs.
not in
Tompkins
here,
is gonna-
but we have to tell
gonna
them.
do- unless you like. We just wanted you to know that we're doing everything we can to accommodate every person that the school board appoints.
I appreciate that, but at some point, we also have to make the committee aware, or the people that we're appointing, if they have a problem, that there is a solution.
Yeah. We can handle that either through John's correspondence with them or through Mrs. Tompkins. So we don't want that to be a restriction.
Okay.
John, anything else? I think that concludes our update today.
Right, Dr. Vogel, if I could, just it would be very important if at the May 19th meeting, when the board identifies these advisory committee members, that we're able to get the very next day their email address at least, and hopefully a cell phone number, because we'll kind of begin our contact with them the next day and kind of get them up to speed on where we are at that point.
Well, we have quite a few. You'll be happy to know. I know I'm happy.
Thank you.
Quite a few that have their phone numbers and their emails attached now. We're just
Perfect.
missing a few.
Thank
So
you.
they have to be filled in.
I have one more thing.
Andrea?
Yeah, I just wanted to loop back and say that I'm going to be trying to call each one of you within the next day or two, certainly before Friday, touch base with you on your suggested question area of focus for the semifinalists so that I have the 5 that we're looking for. So if you see 850-566-1860 on your phone, that's me.
Okay, glad you gave us your number. The spam is unbelievable lately. Bill?
Just like to thank the board and the Mitzi and Kathy and Nina and your tech team and everyone. I mean, the process is going along extremely well right now. Thank you very much, and we're always available if we can answer any questions or if you have any suggestions. Thank you.
Well, I thank
Thank
the
you.
3 of you. You have
Thank
done
you.
an excellent job. It's something that I knew we could do, but I didn't know it would. I didn't realize it would be this simple.
Well,
Because
your tech team makes a difference. I'm here to tell you.
That's right, absolutely.
Question.
Our staff is great. Missy?
So on the timeline, again, I just wanted to verify that at the last meeting when we discussed this, we had changed the meeting to approve the contract to July 23rd to coincide with the tentative budget adoption. I didn't see that was changed on here. I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
I think what we've posted.
Yes, ma'am. The new one that I have, we really made
Remind
2
us.
changes from the last meeting. We specifically identified the interview dates to be June 30th, July 1st and 2nd. Those are the specific dates that the finalists would have to have available. And we did change July 23rd for the meeting in which the board will approve the contract. I think you already had a scheduled meeting. I'll be glad to send this updated one to Kathy as soon as we get off.
Okay, great.
So we want the 23rd instead of the 21st.
Because you're coming
Yeah.
ready to
Okay.
do the tentative budget, so.
I'm not that far ahead in my calendar. Bill?
Tucker, Mr. Hardy, I might want to involve you in this point. I think the last time we did a search, you circulated a contract around to the board members and we're prepared to at least have have individual conversations or at least just make sure the board knows, what contracting was done in the past and maybe get their input or however you handle that as the board attorney.
Well, my recollection was last time we had a shell of a contract, a draft contract that we then discussed at a board workshop.
Correct, right. And we have that on for the May 19th.
So is it the board's desire to have a draft contract ready for May 19th? Because I'm not there yet, but I certainly can be if you want me to be.
Not by me. I don't. Shirley, Jane, Bridget?
No,
No?
no,
I'm
not in
seeing two
May.
no's.
I'm thinking June.
There's 3 no's.
Is it June?
Bridget?
Yeah, so again, I think it's important I want to make sure we discuss it as a board. I think that's very, very important. And as far as the date of which we do that, I'm flexible with that, but I do want to make sure they're not one-off conversations. I think that has to be done at a workshop. I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly.
That's how we did it last time. I was
Right.
thinking that was perhaps a June conversation,
Yeah,
but
I would agree.
if you want it in May, we'll do it in May, whatever the board prefers.
We'll move that to June then, one of the June dates, but that's definitely what my recommendation would be, to have it during a workshop, but we'll move it to one of the June dates.
Okay.
Can I just summarize where we're at, if I could?
Mitzi?
So for the May workshop, what we're going to discuss is the procedures and guidelines for the committee. Finalize that so that you can vote on that at your school board meeting at 3:00 from the workshop. You will also discuss your committee members, and then again, that finalized list will be voted on by the school board at their meeting. Then you'll have the method and process for your finalist selections, the outline of finalist interview schedule, the board interview questions, and then contract negotiation items that you were going to discuss at the next workshop. But now then the contract itself will go to June for the board to review. Is that correct? Does that agree with what you guys were saying?
That's what I have.
I think that's what I have. Thank you.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Everyone good?
Thank
you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the superintendent's report.
Okay. Next is the hearing of citizens, which we have received via email. Several comments and questions from our constituents, and they will be put online. Their questions and will be put online as we would normally do, and we don't read them at the meetings. We don't answer at the meetings when we're here, so we're not going to answer now virtually. Yes, Shirley.
Well, there's been, I think, for the last 3 meetings, several comments asking us to do something in regards to gun safety, telling the parents just to lock up their guns at home with the kids at home. And we've never actually addressed it. Perhaps, should we add something or put something on the website? We haven't done anything. We've just let that thing go, and no response has been made at all. Either, from the district that I saw or anything. It seems like, they say something and then they just die.
Well, I'm not advocating for and against, but more when they come to the board meetings and they address us, we don't answer them. So this is the same thing.
But sometimes we ask staff to do something about it, and they at least get heard, but we aren't even hearing. The public is hearing what they're saying, and I don't know if there's anybody else that feels that there might be value in just sending a note out to parents to be watchful of make sure the guns are stored now that kids are home.
I'll let Mrs. Cochran take that because that's a superintendent's responsibility.
You can share those emails with her, hopefully.
She gets them.
I have the emails, so we can address something, I guess, on the website. I'll have a conversation with communications about, if that's the will of the board, I guess ultimately I need to know, is that the will of the board?
Eric?
I think things like, we have enough things going on to get into guns, abortion, religion. I just think that we just don't need that issues boiling out. It's going to bring a lot of people out, and I just don't think we need all that issue right now. I think maybe we can discuss that later, but I think right now, things like abortion, guns, religion, prayer on school, all that kind of stuff, we should just put on the back burner right now, concentrate on COVID, concentrate on finding the next superintendent, and not, stirring up another controversy.
I agree with you, Eric. Okay.
Well, we weren't taking any guns away. They were just saying kids are home and just,
I know,
keep your guns safe, but
I know, but
All right.
at what point are we a school board?
All
And
right,
at what point do parents take ownership? And I know we want to do everything to keep our kids safe, but at what point does it become the parents' responsibility? So I'm with Eric. I think we just leave this alone. Don't have staff respond to it. We have enough going on. You're right. So do I have somebody else that believes in that way? Because I need 3. Bridget, you agree? Okay, that's it. We're not addressing
And
it.
Jane, I think it's thumbs up.
It was thumbs up from Eric is there, Bridget is there, and Jane is there. Okay. All right, so that concludes the hearing of citizens. All right, these pages are stuck. Any corrections or additions, Ms. Superintendent?
The instructional classified personnel report had an addendum issued on Friday, and the approval of the agreement between Pieces of a Dream Counseling Center has been pulled and is going to be moved to a future meeting date. There were some additional questions that hadn't been answered yet.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please?
I move for approval of the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
And Bridget, okay. Jane and Bridget.
Are they voting?
You don't vote on things. Did you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
I voted electronically.
Yeah, me too.
My electronic thing wasn't working.
Okay.
If you refresh it,
You have
Shirley,
to-
it comes
You have
back
to
up.
you have to sign into it separately.
I see it now. Press escape.
Eric, I don't have you.
It said press escape. It's still not working.
Did you go
Aye.
in?
Press escape and double click.
Eric's done it.
Eric's come in.
Aye.
No, you came in. I got your vote.
I'm just trying to help Shirley.
Hang on. We got to do this for a while, so we got to understand what it is we're doing. And got it? You hear that, English?
Yeah, I got it up and it's not taking my vote. It's here, but I'm not.
Okay. So the motion passes 5-0. All items pulled for comment. Now we'll go into new business. Item 28. Anybody want to make a motion on item
I
28?
move for approval of the new job description for library media center technician as presented.
May I have a second?
I'll second. A brief description or reason.
So, as you know, during the negotiations, we made modifications and changes to what was considered an SSP 7 aid. However, we have a media aid that doesn't have its own job description, which is very different from these other aids. So this is just providing its own separate job description for those individuals in that category.
It's still not taking my clicks.
Aye.
Aye,
I got everyone but Shirley, so
and I vote aye.
vote passes 5-0. Or unanimously, whichever you want to say. May I have a motion on 29?
I move for a approval of the new job description for reading recovery teacher.
Second.
Any discussion? Please
Yeah.
vote. Didn't come up here.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Bridget, it's not coming up here. There we go.
Oh, there you go.
All right, so Shirley, so the motion passes 5-0. Is that it? That's it.
Is that it?
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
Comments?
Believe it or not, That's it.
Anybody else have comments?
Eric?
Yes. So next board meeting, we're going to have a workshop and a meeting, and in the workshop, I imagine it's going to be a little bit longer than the workshop we had last time. Is it possible for us to social distance and we're in the chambers for the workshop? I think it's very difficult to do a workshop in this manner. County Commission has figured out a way to social distance and meet with 5 people. I think that we can figure it out too. We got the curtain, do the AB, and still do the electronic virtual where citizens can see things virtually. But is that a possibility, Mitzi? Superintendent Corcoran?
Of course, if we can get everybody in and do it that way, I mean, I'll work with Joe and Jamal and Brandon.
I'm just one board member. I just think that it facilitates the process a lot easier for a long workshop.
I would prefer that also.
Okay.
But we're not going to be at the dais. So,
We're never at the dais on a workshop.
no, I know that, Eric, but we're not going to be sitting next to each other. You have to have 6 feet apart.
Right.
So your traditional workshop that you're thinking of, Shirley, is not going to be.
I understand. You can have a table and have people sit at one end. It can
Tables
happen.
down there, 2 sets of tables. Okay.
I mean, I think we could probably set it up easily within this room. I mean, you need, 6 feet apart. I don't think that'll be a problem. It's just figuring out the logistics with
The camera.
John and the televising of it. That's going to, but I think they could. Yeah, because again, right now, we're not using the cameras in the board chambers. We're using a separate camera just for the Zoom to get Caroline and I. So
We have a
again,
great IT department.
I know. So they'll just have to, we have 2 weeks.
Is everybody comfortable with doing that?
Yes, I'm hoping to.
Okay. Jane, I haven't heard you.
I'm comfortable with doing that if it's, easy for IT to do with all the things on their plate. I'm fine with it, whatever everybody else wants to do.
All right. I heard from Eric and Shirley, so. All right. The next monthly work session is scheduled for May 19th. The time to be determined. And the next board meeting is scheduled for May 19th at 3 p.m.
Don't adjourn, please.
Bridget,
Wait a minute, I want something too.
Oh, I just didn't want you to adjourn prematurely. No, I just wanted to touch base, and I know that again, a lot of the discussions as as each state and Florida specifically is phasing into reopening. I know that there's been a lot of discussions. I know I've had this with the superintendent, and I know this FADS has also put forward some recommendations or requests to the Department of Education. I know people within the public are as we plan. I mean, these things come quickly, but I know there's a lot of unknowns. I know I had a conversation with someone today and let them know we're certainly having contingency discussions. I know we addressed this at the last meeting, but I didn't know if there had been any update as to what that looks like. I said I know what FADS had sent over as as far as a task force and getting some direction from a uniform standpoint, but Mitzi, can you talk at all to that aspect? And I don't expect you to have solidified answers by any means, but I think it's important that for anyone in the public, but also to understand that those are ongoing discussions. And if we're waiting for the Department of Education, or what are those next steps as we evaluate come August? What that looks like.
So
Where's your crystal ball? No,
I was gonna, for August, the crystal ball is very cloudy. Jane wants to speak. Wait, do you want me to finish?
Yeah.
Jane, is this
The ball, and then I'll speak.
okay?
Go ahead, and I'll speak.
Okay, so as far as summer, we've been having conversations. You can ask Art ad nauseum at Cabinet regarding the opening of schools and as far as our summer programming. So summer programming is coming up first, so I'll kind of talk about that. I'm hoping to have a plan from Chris, Steve, and Sonia on what we're going to try to do for this summer. Again, in June, we don't believe that social distancing we believe it'll still be around. So the thought is we know we have a large number of students who either they're seniors that are potentially graduating but may not be able to quite. We've got to get them caught up in order to be able to graduate. We have students who may have incompletes as a result of distance learning. We have students who may have scored a 1 or a 2 on the FSA had they not, but they haven't had to take the test. So we're trying to identify those students who have the most need, and hoping that over the summer we can, in lieu of having a summer reading camp because there's no 3rd grade FSA scores, in lieu of a summer learning academy because we can't have the kids come into our schools, that we actually try to identify these students and do a little bit more one-on-one small group interventions, again, all from a remote capacity. So they're working on those plans. We also are required and mandated, to have extended school year for our ESC students. Again, what does it look like? How is it going to be done? But we're trying to do that all in the month of June. Then we have students who are transitioning from 5th to 6th grade, 8th to 9th grade, and maybe even are entering kindergartners and 1st graders. So maybe in July, we can grab those transition students. That can still be done distance learning wise, but maybe have a mini summer learning academy for our entering kindergartners, at least so that they're prepared when the school year begins. So this is all in anticipation of the school year opening normally, which I don't know any of us really believe that's going to happen. So then you have all of the conversation around transportation. So how do we don't have enough buses, and we certainly don't have enough bus drivers to have our children all travel on a bus 6 feet apart. We don't have enough physical classroom space in order to be able to open and have all of our students sitting 6 feet apart. Do we take student temperatures? When do you take those temperatures? Before they get on the bus, so our bus drivers are taking the temperatures, or after they get off the bus? And if they have a temperature, then what happens to that child? Because again, if they have a temperature before they get on the bus and we say, no, you can't get on the bus, but mom and dad have already left for work, then what happens to that child? So there's so many unanswered questions. So we're working through those and trying to figure out what best. Is it split school shift days? Is it, do we need to hire more teachers? Because again, if you are currently, it's 9 people in a room with a teacher. That's the most we could ever have currently. So that gets me through K through 3 with 1 teacher, split shifts on 2 classes, 2 different sessions for 1 teacher. But then you go to 22 students in 4 through 8, 25 students, 9 through 12. You get into elective courses that aren't required to have, only 25 kids. You have some foreign language classes that may have 30, 35 kids in. And so am I going to have to hire a whole glut of teachers just to have them learn? Are we going to do it distance-wise? I know that I've had emails from parents saying, I want to opt out and just have my child log in and watch their teacher teach the rest of the students, but they're staying at home. I mean, I've had so many different questions, and at this point, we just don't have enough answers. It's kind of a wait and see on how we kind of come out of it on the long run, because again, even when the superintendents all get together and have a conversation, it's a lot more questions than answers, unfortunately, at this point in time.
Jane?
Well, just as Bridget started with and Mitzi stated, there are a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of things that are changing. This is such a fluid situation. But after reviewing the FADS document that was sent by the superintendents, we've spent the last 5 days brainstorming and sent a letter, in fact, as we were in this meeting, to Governor DeSantis and Commissioner Corcoran relative to the Florida School Board's position and what we hope will be some great flexibility that will be given to school boards, because as we all know, what happens here in Sarasota is very different from what may be happening in Suwannee County. So, the financial implications alone of next year's budget and the following year, along with, how much PPE do we have to provide and what will that do, and the liability and the testing. And the main thing that we wanted to stress was that, we want to give these kids some great care, some compassion and grace, as we've done during this season and the rest of the year, but also in the fall when they come back, make sure that we do a lot in mental health. because a lot of our kids are going to need some help with mental health. So I'll be glad to share this letter. I don't have a final copy of it, but I'll get one and get it all to you all within the next day.
I have it because I was in on the editing. Eric, and then Bridget.
Two things. The first thing is if we are going to have some sort of summer learning academy, I want to make sure that everything's done safely, but I also want to be cognizant of the fact that we did get $100,000 from the state to do summer learning academy, and I don't know, we didn't get $100,000 last budget for this year's summer. I said, Mitzi,
No.
shaking her head.
Well, so just so you know, the $100,000 was spent in July of 2018.
All right.
I just wanted to let you know, it's July
Oh.
through June.
Oh,
So,
so the money from this time would be, okay. Then the other thing was, what about sports? So I know restaurants, they have to open up 25% capacity, but outside, there is no limit. And so if you go with that same thought process of outside, I mean, are we going to be putting restrictions on, say, football camp, which is handled outside, baseball camp? You know, I know these are non-academic things that happen during the summer.
SHAA.
So I know that there are volleyball camps. Stuff. When I say camps, some of them are not sanctioned by FHSA because they're for 8-year-olds. Wheatley's Wacky Adventure is 8-year-olds to high schoolers. It's not the volleyball team. It's a volleyball camp.
not a school board
Right.
function.
It's not a school board sanction. They rent the place out, so it's not FHSAA. So my question is any thought been given to allowing those people to do that?
Well, we're not allowing any rentals currently, so, I mean.
Even if it's outside?
You know, at this point, I don't know that we want to have gatherings greater than, I mean, you know,
Just asking the question. People are asking me, so I'm just asking you. I'm not overly advocating. I'm just asking the
I
question.
kind of defer to Art from a legal perspective, but I wouldn't necessarily think it would be beneficial for us to have large groups on our campuses when they're technically closed, at least currently.
I didn't know what the criteria was during the summer, if the summer criteria was going to be the same. So thank you.
Bridget.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that, and I don't, not to be misunderstood, I know these are ongoing questions. I think also just for the public to know, there are so many unknowns and there are a lot of potential contingencies that conversations of staff is taking place and collaboratively with, you know, other superintendents and school board members across the state as to figure out what that looks like. And I also, not only as from a parent standpoint and planning, but also, you know, we have, you know, 5,000 plus and 2,000, 7,000 plus employees, and trying to figure out what that looks like, and also making sure we're communicating that properly. And there's a lot of unknowns, as Mitzi just highlighted. But I think it's important that there's awareness that it's not a wait and see fully. There's a lot of elements that are being considered. I'm really glad that you touched upon the educational, instructional standpoint, certainly as we return. And the conversations and ongoing discussions that the preparedness for whatever our students need at the return, whatever that may look like, is certainly being discussed and considered. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Shirley.
I just wanted to shout out to our teachers. This is something that I saw Jane and Caroline, I think you've already seen it on my Facebook. It's a t-shirt I saw. I will teach you in a room. I will teach you now on Zoom. I will teach you in a house. I will teach you now with my mouse. I will teach you here or there. I will teach because I care. I think that is the sentiment of so many of our teachers now. And I really, really want to put a hand out to all of our teachers for the extra work that they're having to put in and the lengths that they're going to try to meet all of our students. And I know, you know, my daughters had to reach out and find some who have moved and left the state and, you know, done other things. And I think it's important that we acknowledge the extra work that our teachers and our staff are doing to meet the needs of our students.
Thank you, Shirley.
Great timing, Shirley, since it's Teacher Appreciation Week.
Did you?
Yeah. If anyone wants those t-shirts are, I think, $15 each now. I think it's t-shirt, well, whatever. You can send me an email. I'll send you a link.
I do. I'm a big
It was
teacher.
on my Facebook. You could get it there.
Right.
Yes, happy Teacher Appreciation Week. We love our teachers and our staff and teachers for all they're doing for our students.
All right, we are adjourned. And see you all in 2 weeks.